Welcome. Today we're going to talk about books, specifically the books that I read in January 2024, because I want to do more about that. We're going to talk a lot more about books, ideas this year than just software. Let's dive in to the five books that I read in January 2024. First up, The Bill Gates Problem by Tim Schwab. This book is about how Bill Gates, after the browser war trials, used his foundation, his philanthropy, all of his money to help whitewash his identity, because he came out of that not as the golden child that everyone wanted to be, and everyone said, hey, Bill Gates, he's so amazing, look at everything he's revolutionizing. He came out as an arrogant asshole who thought he knew more than everyone else, and would tell you he knew more than everyone else, and knew more than you, right? In the browser war trials, if you watch them, he regularly corrects the questions that he's asked. Says, no, that's not really the question you should be asking, and tells you the question you should be asking, then answers that one instead. So Schwab feels that we really saw the real Bill Gates during that time. We saw Bill Gates as an arrogant asshole, really. Someone who felt he is high in expertise and knows way more than you. There's an interesting book called The Death of Expertise that I looked at quite a long time ago that talks about this, how we often take someone who has smarts in one spot and figure they have smarts in everything and let them weigh in on it. And that's what the Bill Gates Foundation, or the Gates Foundation, does. It works to really let Bill Gates, his money, Melinda Gates, their money, run pretty much all of philanthropy everywhere. Because of the wealth of the money, Bill Gates gets to kind of be a jerk. He gets to show up, he gets to give you a check, and then give you a checklist, right down to you are allowed to hire these people or not allowed. Like, they want to weigh in on who you are hiring at different times and tell you if that's allowed or not. They decide that you can't pursue certain methods of investigation into science. You know, if they're financing your science, they say, no, that's not what we're financing. We're only financing this. And it always, goes to what they think is important. They'll tell you you're doing your experiments wrong, or that they don't like the outcomes of it, so you need to go back and rework them. And very few people are willing to speak out against this because of the billions and billions and billions of dollars that Bill Gates gives out. And their projects will never get funded again if they speak out against Bill Gates. It's called the Bill Chill. When he says no to something, like the whole industry-wide says no, because that's where the money comes from. Now, coming out of this book, you wonder, again, why we let a single person use their philanthropy to influence so much of our lives, from how we want to treat malaria to vaccines, what vaccines are important or what interventions are important, because sometimes a vaccine is not the most important intervention. But we do, and in America, at least, you fund most of it because Bill Gates gets massive tax write-offs for giving money to his foundation. So you support, Schwab says about 50% of his philanthropy is supported by U.S. taxpayers, which means the U.S. taxpayers get less services because Bill Gates is donating so much money. I don't know if you like that. I don't think that sounds good. Overall, I enjoyed the book. I recommend it. It's going into my file as a long-term one for a book I'd love to write about. In America, we don't call them oligarchs. They're billionaires. But really, they're oligarchs. They use their money to influence the decisions that get made in society. Second book, Third Door by Alex Banayan. It's a story of a kid who gets to study at USC, University of Southern California, I believe it is, but decided that his time would be better spent not studying to become a doctor, I believe it was. And he should read books instead. He should pursue his passion, his idea to write books and interview really expensive, important people, like Bill Gates, actually. Yeah, he's got an interesting story. He went on the Wheel of Fortune. He figured out how to game it, basically, and won, I think, $30,000, and used that to help finance a bunch of his writing. But he also had parents that, had a storage room at their business that he could just sit in and write. He has, over and over, he's talking about, I jet set over here, and I did this, and I did that, and he spent all this money over, a number of years while seeing no real income that he explains anyways. And my biggest wondering out of this is, how on earth could we say, hey, this is successful? He's saying, find the third door, right? The first door right up the front doesn't work. The back door doesn't work. You got to find the third door, the way around. And his way around is actually, he has a whole bunch of money, a whole bunch of support from other people. And so he can just keep trying until it works, which is a typical rich kid thing where they say, hey, I tried a whole bunch of stuff and this is what worked. But they had 52,000 kicks at the can because they had enough money, enough support, and everything else. So they can keep going. You and I can't. I can try one or two things, and then I got kids to feed, so I got to keep going with my job. This book is pure hustle culture, tech bro nonsense. It never acknowledges how much financial privilege Alex has. There's definitely a time when I would have loved this book. That's why I bought it, because I thought, oh, this is so good. He's talking about the third door and the way around. But I can't help but disdain the hustle culture vibes that come through it. It's just ridiculous, right? He goes off with this guy who's trying to build his own ski village, which is astronomical expensive. I don't know. Anyway, so do I recommend this book? No, I would not recommend this book as a really good one. It is pure hustle culture nonsense. Now, Feel Good Productivity by Ali Abdaal. I'll probably go through this one a little deeper. Disclosure, they did send me this book along with some stickers with the hopes that I'd do something. There was no other exchange with it. They said, hey, can we send you a book because you review books? And I said, sure, because I was looking at buying it anyways. So if you missed it, Ali Abdaal is a former, doctor. Wasn't sure if he went from junior doctor to doctor, but former doctor and a famous productivity YouTuber who talks about, productivity and how to live a decent life. Ultimately, Abdaal builds the book on the back of positive psychology, which brings into question some of the conclusions, because positive psychology is one of the areas of psychology that is firmly in the replication crisis, meaning these studies that a lot of people really go on. Sean Achor is one, the Happiness Project. A lot of the stuff in there has been proven to not be true because it's not replicable. So he found Sean Achor found one little spot where it is replicable, and that's it. That one little spot he did it once, and that's it. And it didn't really work after that. Now, that doesn't mean that these books are bad. Ultimately, I think if you find a productivity book that's not telling you, super dumb stuff, it's saying, hey, like, a lot of this is work harder. Find the stuff that you are really good at. Find the stuff that you enjoy and keep doing that. If you can do that, if you can find a book that does that, then it's helping you, getting more done, living a good, balanced life. By all means, go for it. One of the big pillars in Abdaal's book, though, is that you have autonomy over your work, and that is what will help you just do better at it, because you have autonomy. You can decide what you want to do. And that is absolutely true. I've actually read numerous studies, numerous things about this. That is true. The unfortunate part is that most people don't have autonomy, right? It's Monday. I have enough autonomy because I make enough money other days of the week to sit and talk about books for more or less nothing. I make a couple dollars an hour, if that, maybe not even dollars an hour, maybe cents an hour doing this. But I have enough autonomy over all of my life and over all of my work to be able to do that. I don't have to work 2 jobs. I don't have to do, tons of other things. Even though I'm the main worker, I make the most income, and I am the main caregiver. I take care of the kids the most because my wife's job, she works after school. But I have to acknowledge that privilege. I'm a white dude, middle-aged white dude. That's hetero-normal, right? Hetero, not normal, is a bad word. That is heterosexual, which is, by society considered what everyone should be, unfortunately. Now, Abdaal does do some acknowledgement of this. He says that a lot of people won't have control over as much of their lives as he does, as many people will. And so he kind of says, do your best at it. That's what he says, which is good. I suppose I can't ask every author to dive into the cultural milieu of capitalism and say, hey, why this is all bad and how, this doesn't really work for a lot of people. Abdaal and he has a lot of privilege, again, being a doctor, having parents. His mom was a doctor, I believe. I just read in a recent interview. So he had a lot of privilege, a lot of finances to fall back on if this failed. And he had already passed to be a doctor. So that's it. Overall, I think his book can be helpful, though. I do think that there's some good ideas in there. There's some good advice in there. I will likely dive into this deeper in a future video. So come back, watch for that. Next, A Simplified Life by Emily Lay. Again, this is a book mainly written towards women, towards caregivers, women in particular, and how women have to deal with having so much thrown on them, having to care for their kids, having to make a casserole for the student thing, all that stuff. As such, I actually found this pretty good because, as I've said already in this video, I do most of the caregiving. I pick up the kids from school, I take them to school, I make sure they get to their activities, I make the dinners, I do the cleanup. My wife works in the evenings. A big thrust of Lay's book is doing less, or having less, which kind of makes sense seeing it's a simplified life. So it was written a number of years ago, back when the big craze was just being simple, right? There's lots of little projects around that. Matt Davella made made a lot of his name in YouTube by being simple, by cutting back on things, right? There's lots of books like this. Ultimately, this is pretty good, right? She goes from, go through all your kitchen cutlery, like cut down the things. You don't need 27 spatulas. Go 2. Pick the 2 that you really need, and that's it. That's all you need. Now, one big assumption that Lay makes is that you have a lot of control over your life. When we come back to this, I've come back to this a lot in my thinking lately with productivity books, with stuff like this, that they assume you have a lot of autonomy and control over your life, and not a lot of people do. This is not true if you have a job with an asshole boss or you have to work 2 jobs. You just got to show up and do the job because you got to eat. Kids got to eat, you got to eat, and capitalism says you have to continue to be productive or you are not worthy of having a place to live even. Again, like I said, I can't ask every author to address this capitalism stuff, but I would love to see a little bit more acknowledging of the privilege in this. Overall, it's an okay book. It's definitely got some faith basis in it as well. So if you're not going to want to read about, following your God-given path, stuff like that, being simple, the odd Bible verse, then maybe not. This is not the book for you. Overall, it's not like over the top, like got everything, but there's definitely some spiritual stuff in it, so avoid it if you don't like that stuff. Finally, Powder Days by Heather Hansman. I like skiing. Fully admit this. I like being outside, and that actually puts me in a fairly affluent area of the world because I can afford to ski. Because I can afford to buy ski boots for my children. Or I use boots. I often have bought used stuff off a friend who has older daughters, and he says, hey, here's a pile of gear for $75. Do you want all these skis and boots and stuff? And I usually say yes, and then I pick up and use the stuff that fits, and I sell the stuff that doesn't. So this really looks at the economics of the skiing market, how it's mostly about serving the white, predominantly wealthy people on the backs of a group of workers that are exploited, sometimes because they don't have full visas. Sometimes it's because they're living precariously, like their housing precariousness, but then we idolize the ski bum who's living in a van as this is amazing, but really that's a sign that they can't actually make it anywhere else. Right? If you're living in a shack, there's talks about people who are living in a tent off the back of a piece of land that's not being developed at the moment, and they're all kind of okay to live there, but they're literally just living there and going to the bathroom out in the forest because that's what they can afford. And that's not good. Like if you're building an industry on that, that's really not good. I enjoyed this critical look at the ski industry, and still she does it with a sense of love. Like she really loves skiing, and I actually really enjoy skiing as well. She doesn't offer a ton of huge solutions to the problem. Again, the solutions to this problem are like a huge economic change in the world. So I'm not sure that a single book about skiing could really do that. She does connect you with some people who are trying to make a change, who are trying to do affordable housing, trying to change how the ski industry works as well. She does address some of the climate change stuff and how a lot of ski hills are just kind of getting out. They're not gonna exist anymore. I look at this in 2024 as we have snow again, but it was literally 12 degrees a few days ago. There is no snow outside of the few piles that the snow plows pushed onto my yard. That's it. That's all the snow I've got. So really, this has not been a ski year. And this is an example of how climate change is drastically affecting a pastime that I enjoy. And the lack of snow will even affect the forest fires we have in BC, which were already bad last year and are likely to be worse this year if we continue to have snow like this. That's it. There's links to all these books in the description if you want to purchase them, if you're interested in any of them. We'll dive into at least the Ali Abdallah one deeper at some point in the future. If you have any books you think that I would enjoy based on this video, things that you would recommend to me, by all means, leave them in the comments. If you read one of these books and have a different take on it, have another idea that you don't feel I touched, by all means, I'd love to hear it. If you really want to support the channel, have me keep, producing notes on books, reading books, and members get all of my books notes included with their membership and all my courses. You can find out about membership, curtismchale.ca/membership. Take a course, curtismchale.ca/education. Have an awesome day.